Welcome to Heart, Soul, Mind, and Strength, where we work toward loving God with everything that makes us human. Have you ever seen aerial photos of places like the Caribbean islands or Tahiti or Bali? You get to see the beautiful, lush green foliage on the island with the thin ring of flawless white sand beaches. But what really takes people's breath away is the crystal clear turquoise water that makes you want to stay there forever. Now, while these places are truly breathtaking to behold, the reason the ocean looks that way is because it's relatively shallow in those areas. And this brings to mind a somewhat recent saying that I've been hearing: all shallows are clear. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, how shallow thinking seems very clear and certain to many people in today's culture. Now, before we get into that, if you've been listening for some time, I'm hoping you've noticed an improvement in the audio quality not long ago. I hope you've enjoyed that, and hopefully you've also noticed some other improvements along the way as well. Now, in order to continue to grow this show and make it better, since this is an independent effort, in other words, I do all the production, all the recording, the editing, the marketing, all that, I want to invite you to help support my efforts to make things better by visiting buymeacoffee.com/greatcommandment. That's GR8 commandment, because that's super clever. It's completely voluntary. You'll still be able to listen to every episode for free, but I do appreciate any support you choose to give. There'll be a link in the show notes so you don't have to try to remember my clever web address. And also, to just continue to reach more people, if you could also share this show with everyone you know, I would appreciate it. And also, if you could give it a great rating in your podcast app, that would help as well. And if you leave a comment or a question, then you basically get to have direct impact on the show, and I will probably respond to comments or questions or whatever your feedback is on a future episode. So, all right, enough announcements. Let's get to it. I have a few questions that I'd like to pose to get you thinking about a few things. When you hear some breaking news or see some viral video of someone doing something to someone else, how quickly do you decide who's guilty or innocent? Once you've made up your mind, do you stick to it, or are you open to new evidence? Do you share your views on social media, or argue with other people about them, or scroll through heated debates and like posts that align with your position? Back in my very first episode of this podcast, I talked about the fact that we are almost never 100% sure about pretty much anything, because there's so many factors and variables that need to be considered to determine the truth in just about every given situation, and humans just don't have the capacity or access to all of them. Therefore, we are virtually never able to be 100% certain about any given thing that may have happened. That doesn't stop many people, unfortunately. For many millions of people, just one short video of some incident from a single camera that didn't even begin recording until after things escalated seems to be enough to come to a conclusion about what happened with such certainty and clarity that they might be willing to resort to pretty drastic action. Hang on, are you talking about something in particular? Nope, in fact, I'm not. Sadly, I wish this only described one particular incident, but it doesn't. There's an increasing number of these things happening all the time nowadays. Now, in episode 10, I talked about how everything is connected and it's all downstream from our theology and affects things like how we judge others. So here's an example of how our understanding of the world we live in informs our moral principles. As humans made in the image of a just God, we all seem to have some sort of built-in sense of justice. We want good people to be rewarded and bad people to be punished. This is something almost all of us can agree on, regardless of whether or not we believe God actually exists. It's this sense of justice that moves us when we see one of these videos posted on social media. We think things like, how could anyone do this? How could we let that happen? That person's going to have to pay for what they've done. The court of public opinion tends to deliver a verdict within a few minutes of seeing a short snippet of video. Guilty as charged. Sometimes guilty before charged. Now that that's over with, we'll watch to see if we need to take steps just to make sure that the actual legally selected jury comes to the right conclusion on this matter. And if it looks like they might start waffling on us, well, we'll have to find a way to apply some pressure or make sure they don't make that mistake. We already know what justice requires. Our minds are made up. Don't confuse us with the facts. Now it's up to a jury of people who will be shown far more evidence and information than anything we got from our little video clip to come to the same conclusion we already did before the video was even half over. We know so very little about so very many things, yet we're so absolutely convinced that we have all the information necessary to make critical decisions, even those that could affect a lot of people, often in error, but never in doubt. No matter how many times you're told the lesson about how much of the iceberg is below the water, no matter how many times your parents have told you not to judge a book by its cover, we still can't help ourselves. We don't want to have our judgments muddied with a bunch of facts and perspectives or broader context. We want things simple, clear, shallow. It's just easier that way. Now, it wasn't always like that. There was a time when it was considered common sense that there could be good men, even great men, who had very serious flaws. Yet those flaws didn't prevent us from thinking of these men as great. We don't even need to look that far into distant history. Just look at our founding fathers: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, Benjamin Franklin, and my favorite, John Adams. These were all great men. Flawed men, but great men. Today, when we idolize some particular person, usually some pop celebrity, it seems like we're so shattered and disappointed when we find out some grievous sin they've committed that we can't possibly ever think or say anything positive about them ever again. This is the very thing that people mean when they talk about cancel culture. It's an all or nothing sort of thing. We throw away the memorabilia, we burn the t-shirts, we take their music off of our playlists, and no one is allowed to even say their name around us. This is a very useful way to go through the world if we want to have less healthy relationships and more divisiveness and more violence and more stress and less joy and more pain and suffering. So what's the alternative? Well, for one thing, we could wait before coming to a conclusion about things. When a new viral video hits social media, maybe we can wait for an investigation to get more information to come out before we decide the verdict and ultimately the fate of the accused. Maybe we need to remember that humans are composed of both good and bad. On the one hand, we're good, made in God's image, and we have his law written on our hearts, Romans 2:15, but also bad. There's no one good, not even one, Romans 3:10. We can try to remind ourselves, even when we legitimately see someone behaving badly, a man shouting at his wife, or a parent seemingly paying no attention to their child, or a customer getting angry at a cashier. We don't know all the variables that brought them to this exact moment. We don't know what they're going through, what weight is on their shoulders, what stress they have in their life. Without knowing those things, we have no legitimate cause to jump to conclusions about their character or what kind of person they are. Anyone who's ever lost a loved one, lost a job, gotten buried in financial debt, found out about a cheating spouse, or anything traumatic, you know that in those moments, you were probably not at your best. You may have been short with people, or maybe you were rude, or maybe you seemed distant or distracted. Maybe when you see someone else behaving that way, they're going through something. So, I'm going to pose a challenge to you. The next time you want to react to some breaking news about a reported injustice, take a pause. Wait for the rest of the facts to come in. A good rule of thumb is to wait at least 72 hours. Typically, during that time, there's a whole lot of new information that comes to light very quickly. And most importantly, whenever you do begin to form your own conclusions, remember there's always the chance that you're wrong. Now, if you want to discuss it with people that disagree with you, great, do that. But be respectful and realize that there are generally three possibilities as you get into that discussion. Number one, it could be that you're right and they're wrong. Number two, it could be that they're right and you're wrong. Or there's a third option. You could both be wrong and the truth is something else entirely. One of my favorite people to teach on this sort of thing is Greg Koukl. Greg is the host of the Stand to Reason and hashtag STRask podcast, where he takes questions and challenges from listeners and engages them in discussion. But he has a very particular rule when he's discussing things, especially with people who don't agree with his worldview. What he says is, if I get mad, I lose. If they get mad, I lose. Kind of reminds me of what the Apostle Paul wrote. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. That's from Romans 12:16. And Peter tells us to be ready to answer people who don't share our view with gentleness and respect from 1 Peter 3:15. So let's maintain some humility because we can always be wrong. And let's treat each other with respect and have a civil discussion about our disagreements. With that, stay humble and stay grateful. Thanks for listening to Heart, Soul, Mind, and Strength. I hope this was helpful and maybe a little thought-provoking for you. Please stop by the website, put in your email so you get any new content, and I'm often adding more content to the resource page, so make sure you get to the site regularly. You'll find a link to the website in the show notes. Finally, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and just about any other podcast player. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell all your friends about it. Until next time.